और इस वक्त अमेरिकी राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस कर रहे हैं। आपको सीधा लिए चलते हैं कॉन्फ्रेंस में।
Energy, and we have more than anybody. We're number one in the world now in energy, so that's going to be very exciting. But I thought it was a great 2 days. It was a fantastic 2 days. I'm going to be not at all controversial because I don't want to blow the 2 days plus 2 days of travel on one answer, one little answer like John will ask me one little simple question, and you'll blow it out, and that'll be the end of the trip. They won't even talk about the trips. I'll be very, very conservative in my answers, if you don't mind. But we did. We had a great time. We had a great meetings, and we're going for a state dinner, and then after that we get back onto the plane and we go back home. It's going to be about 19 hours, but we look forward to it. Get in tomorrow. But this is a tremendous country. It's 1.4 billion, probably at least the most people, and this market, and they really like us, and I think they like us more now than they've ever liked us, frankly. We have a terrific, a really great relationship between the Prime Minister and myself. So we're going to be doing a lot of things. I think it was really, really worth it. You may ask about the coronavirus, which is very well under control in our country. We have very few people with it, and the people that have it are, in all cases, I have not heard anything other. Maybe there's something new, because for 2 days I haven't been seeing too much of that news, of very much news, because it's been very all-encompassing. We've accomplished a lot here. We had a lot of meetings, as you know. But the people are getting better. They're all getting better. We brought in some Americans from a ship because it was really the right thing to do, and they're in quarantine. And we think they'll be in very good shape very, very soon. We discussed a lot of different elements. We actually discussed the coronavirus, and at this moment, India doesn't have much of a problem, they feel. It wasn't expressed that they did, which is great. And I think that whole situation will start working out. A lot of talent, a lot of brain power is being put behind it. $2.5 billion we're putting in. I see that Chuck Schumer criticized that he thought it should be more. And if I gave more, he'd say it should be less. It's automatic, with these characters. They're just not good for our country. If I gave more, he'd say it should be less. But that's what they do. In the meantime, that's all they can do. They're not getting anything done. We have so many things we could get done. We could so easily do prescription drug. Last year was the first year in 51 years where prescription drug prices went down. But we could drive them down really well if we had the Democrat votes. We need some additional votes. We would really drive them down, as you know. So with that, I think what we'll do is take some questions, and we'll go to a nice state dinner, and then we go home. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Mr. President, you just addressed coronavirus, so I will put that aside for the moment. You tweeted about Justice Sotomayor yesterday, saying that she and Justice Ginsburg should recuse themselves from future cases dealing with the administration. What is the basis for your opinion on that?
Well, it's very obvious. I always thought that, frankly, that Justice Ginsburg should do it because she went wild during the campaign when I was running. I don't know who she was for. Perhaps she was for Hillary Clinton, if you can believe it. But she said some things that were obviously very inappropriate. She later sort of apologized. I wouldn't say it was an apology, but she sort of apologized. And then Justice Sotomayor said what she said yesterday. You know very well what she said yesterday. It was a big story. And I just don't know how they can not recuse themselves for anything having to do with Trump or Trump-related. The right thing to do is that. Now, as a Supreme Court justice, is a different standard. But at the same time, I think it's a higher standard in a certain sense. So they'll have to decide what to do. But her statement was so inappropriate. When you're a justice of the Supreme Court, and it's almost what she's trying to do is take the people that do feel a different way and get them to vote the way that she would like them to vote. I just thought it was so inappropriate. Such a terrible statement for a Supreme Court justice.
What was inappropriate about the statement? I'm not an attorney, so I can't really look into
what the
these,
statement was, John.
Well, she seemed to criticize the White House for running to the Supreme Court at the drop of a hat to seek a
No,
stay.
I don't think that was it. But I think what she did say is she's trying to shame, the way I look at it, he's trying to shame people with perhaps a different view into voting her way. And that's so inappropriate. So let's see what happens. We have things, whether or not they recuse themselves, both. I mean, look, Justice Ginsburg, during my campaign, you know, I protested at the time. She apologized in a very minor form. And what Justice Sotomayor said yesterday was really highly inappropriate, and everybody agrees to that. Virtually everybody. I've seen papers on it. People cannot believe that she said it. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The intelligence community believes that Russia is trying to meddle in the 2020 election. Do you agree with their assessment? And what is your message to Vladimir Putin about potentially interfering regardless of the candidate they support?
Well, you know, what I'm reading, and again, I'm over here for the last number of days, but they went to see Bernie, and they told Bernie about something having to do with they want Bernie to win. They did not tell me. Intelligence never told me, and we have a couple of people here that would know very well. They never told me anything about that, and it was sort of a strange thing that they went to Bernie. And now I find out, if I believe what I read in some of your documents and some of your papers, that it was highly exaggerated. And frankly, I think it's disgraceful. And I think it was leaks from the Intelligence Committee, House version, and I think that they leaked it. I think probably Schiff leaked it, but people within that, Schiff leaked it, in my opinion. And he shouldn't be leaking things like that. That's a terrible thing to do. But basically, they would like to see Bernie is probably winning, and looks like he's winning, and he's got a head of steam, and they maybe don't want him for obvious reasons. So they don't want him, so they put out a thing that Russia's backing him. This is what they do. I've gone through it for a long time. I get it. I get the game better than anybody. And that's the way it is. Terrible thing to say. And they didn't say it about me. I will say this. Somebody leaked it in intelligence, but nobody ever told me that. We have Ambassador O'Brien in the audience someplace, and he can tell you that this was never discussed with us. So I think it's terrible. They ought to stop the leaking from Intelligence Committee. And if they don't stop it, I can't imagine that people are not going to go after them and find out what's happening. Yeah, please.
But do you believe...
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. President, this is Madhu Bhatia Jha from Indian TV News, ABP
Yes.
News. And you're trying to get a peace deal with the Taliban, and India has a growing investment in Afghanistan. So the way the deal is being worked out, what would be India's role and Pakistan's role in the region?
Well, I think India would like to see it happen. I spoke with Prime Minister Modi today, and I think they would very much like to see it happen. And we're pretty close. We'll see what's going on. We've got 2 days now under our belt without violence, or I guess a minimum of violence. And we'll see what happens, but people want to see it. It's very interesting, that one. Everybody's happy about it, even people that are normally against me, like 99.9% of the time, because we've been there for 19 years, and everybody would like to see it happen. I was actually surprised. I thought the Schumers of the world would say whatever the opposite is, because that's all they can do, cry and chuck. But people are they're really happy to see that we're trying very hard. We'd bring it down to 8,600, and from there we'll make a decision as to what the final outcome would be. But there's been tremendous praise for the fact that we're doing something. Other administrations have tried to do something. In particular, the previous administration, for a long time, they were never able to get anything done. And we're really serving not as a military force as we are a police force. And we're not a police force. They have to police their own country. We're not a police force. It's like law enforcement. And that's the way it is. So we'd like to, after 19 years, we'd like to bring our young people back home, bring them, that's where they want to be. And we'll always have intelligence there. We'll have other things there. But we'd like to bring them, for the most part, we'd like to bring them back home. We want to watch the area. The area is a hotbed of problems. And when we bring them home, we'll let them know that if something happens, we will hit them so hard. And we could win that easily if I wanted to kill millions of people. I don't want to kill millions of people, innocent people. We could win that very easily. We don't have to act as a police force. We could act as a military force to win, not a military force to just take care of things in that very, very difficult part of the world. It's a very difficult part, very dangerous part of the world. So let's see what happens. So far, so good. So far, but I'm very impressed with the kind of kudos we're getting. Yes, please.
Mr. President, namaste. I'm Saurabh Shukla. I'm editor-in-chief of Newsmobile. If you remember, I interviewed you during your last campaign in New Jersey.
Good.
And I asked you this question earlier at that time about a Trump doctrine on fighting out Islamic fundamentalism, which you spoke about, and you discussed with Prime Minister Modi, and you spoke about the Modi-Trump doctrine. So what is your roadmap to fight out Islamic radical terrorism?
Well, I don't think anybody's done more than I have, if you look, because I came in, and if you check your maps and look at Iraq and Syria, it was all over. In fact, they had it painted a certain color. I won't tell you what color because it doesn't matter. Somebody will say it was a Republican color, so I don't want to get people confused. But it happened to be red, and it was basically trying to show where ISIS was in those areas. And it was out of control. And I gave the orders, and we have 100% of the caliphate. We have tens of thousands of people in prisons now. They're being guarded by the Kurds and others. Europe should take a lot of them back. So far, they haven't agreed to do that. They should do that because we did them a big favor. We captured them, but I did that. We killed al-Baghdadi a few months ago, and Soleimani is gone. He's no longer putting roadside bombs all over the place. Somebody else may be, but he was the father, the king of the roadside bomb. All of those young people that you see with missing legs and arms. I've seen every combination. The legs are gone. You go over to Walter Reed. I have to say the doctors at Walter Reed are incredible what they're able to do. Incredible. But that's what his thing was. He thought that was a beautiful weapon, roadside bombs. It's a coward's bomb. And all of these young people that have been so badly hurt. And we did a big favor. In addition to that, as you know, Hamza bin Laden is now gone. And he was looking to do damage, and he's gone. And Al-Qaeda last week, you saw what happened there.
Absolutely.
So nobody's done more than what I've done. And but at the same time, Russia should do it, Iran should do it, Iraq should do it, Syria should do it. You know, we're in a different part of the world. We're doing it. Everybody says you're the only ones that can do it. Well, at some point, these other countries, I mean, Iran should do it. Iran hates ISIS, and they should do it. And we've done a great job. We've taken our soldiers essentially out of Syria, except for little hot spots that we forget, will do, that develop. But we've taken the oil, and the soldiers we have there are the ones guarding the oil. We have the oil. So that's all we have there. And now we have, if you look, we are down to a small force in Iraq. We're down to a small force very shortly, but right now even we have a small force in Afghanistan. And so we're moving out and moving around, but the only soldiers we have in terms of Syria, the predominant number of soldiers are the ones guarding the oil.
What about terror groups in Pakistan, sir? That's a big concern in this region, and there are a lot of terror groups who pose dangers to the United States and democracies like India as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, but you also have other countries that can do this. The United States is 8,000 miles away, and they're all saying, could you do it? Yeah, we could do it. We've been doing it for a long time, but I've been doing it much better than anyone else has done it. I mean, what we've done in the last couple of years has been incredible. We have 100% of the caliphate. Remember, we had 99%. I'd say, good, we're leaving. And I was hit with, people couldn't believe it. They said, do 100. So we did 100. I did 100 with some great generals that knew exactly what they were doing. They were unbelievable. We took 100% of the caliphate. And we have thousands of prisoners right now locked up. And these are ISIS fighters, and killed thousands. Not that I want to do that. I don't want to do that, but that's what we had to do. And when I came in, ISIS was all over the place. It was totally out of control. Please. Thank you.
While you've been here in the country, in the capital, northeast part of Delhi, there have been violent clashes. Police have been killed, some
Yeah.
demonstrators, 9 deaths so far, we hear, and about 100 plus injured. What did Prime Minister Modi say to you about this amended citizenship law? And how concerned are you about this kind of religious violence?
So we did talk about religious freedom, and I will say that the Prime Minister was incredible on what he told me. He wants people to have religious freedom, and very strongly, and he said that in India they have worked very hard to have great and open religious freedom. And if you look back and look at what's going on relative to other places especially, but they have really worked hard on religious freedom. I asked that question in front of a very large group of people today, and he talked about it. We talked about it for a long time, and I really believe that's what he wants. As far as the individual attack, I heard about it, but I didn't discuss that with him. That's up to India. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, sir. Emily Goodman with the DailyMail.com. I was wondering, do you think justice was served in the Harvey Weinstein case?
So I was never a fan of Harvey Weinstein, as you know. In fact, he said he was going to work hard to defeat me in the election. How did that work out, by the way? I'm trying to figure that out. He was a person I didn't like, never liked. I don't know too much about the case because, as you know, I've been over here between traveling and being at meetings almost every hour of the day, every minute of the day. I haven't been able to really see too much of it. But I was just not a fan of his. I knew him a little bit, not very well. I knew him because he was in New York. Not a person that I like. I will say the people that liked him were the Democrats. Michelle Obama loved him. Hillary Clinton loved him. And he gave tremendous money to the Democrats, and I guess my question is, will the Democrats be asking for that money back? Because he gave a lot of money to the Democrats, and, it's too bad, but that's the way it worked out. Yeah, Peter?
I just want to follow up on that very quickly, if I can, Mr. President. Then I have a question that I wanted to ask you. But just on the Harvey Weinstein situation, this is being viewed as a milestone for the Me Too movement. What message can you, as president, deliver to women in America who are still afraid to come forward and share their stories of sexual harassment and assault?
Well, again, I don't know the actual results. I haven't seen too much because I've been in India, as you know.
Aside from
but
the
I think that from the standpoint of women, I think it was a great thing. It was a great victory, and sends a very strong message. Very, very strong message, Peter. Yeah, please.
Can I follow up with my question? I just wanted to follow up on hers quickly. Can I, on coronavirus specifically, Mr. President, in 2014, when the Ebola situation was very concerning to so many Americans, you tweeted, "Ebola patient will be brought to the U.S. in a few days. Now I know for sure that our leaders are incompetent." In all caps, you wrote, "Keep them out of here." More than 20 Americans have now been brought back to the United States with coronavirus. By your own measure, does that mean that your government has been incompetent? Are you pleased with the response?
There's a big difference, in case you don't know, between Ebola and coronavirus. Big difference. It's like day and night. And I felt that we should bring them back. They're Americans. We should bring them back. With Ebola, it's very explosive. It's very terrible. We're making tremendous strides on EbOla with the things that we're doing, as you know.
Isn't some of the money that you're requesting... Sorry,
let me answer the question. But there's a vast difference in bringing, especially in around 14, was that 14 or 12? And at that time, nobody had ever even heard of Ebola or ever conceived of something where you basically, people would disintegrate. And we're still working on Ebola. We're doing the vaccine.
Though, right?
Yeah, we're doing a vaccine. We're doing a lot of things having to do with Ebola. We're not forgetting about Ebola. That's a horrible thing. But we have that now very much under control, other than certain parts of the Congo where they're having war and we can't get in. So we're still working on that. But as far as what we're doing with the new virus, I think that we're doing a great job. I felt that, and the decision was made in Japan, let these Americans come back and we'll see where they are, but they were immediately put into quarantine. There's no problem with it whatsoever. They're all in quarantine. And as you know, I approved $2.5 billion for just that purpose, and also for working and getting a vaccine.
For clarity, those with Ebola, when they were brought here, were quarantined, and all the Americans also survived, right?
I know, but the level of death with Ebola, at the time it was a virtual 100%.
But none of the Americans who came here.
There's a very good chance you're not going to die. It's just it's very much the opposite. You're talking about 1 or 2%, whereas in the other case it was a virtual 100%. Now they have it. They have studied it. They know very much. In fact, we're very close to a vaccine. Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Oh, all right.
Hi, I'm Swati Chandrasekhar from TV5 Network.
Good. Thank you.
So how do you define, differentiate, and deal with the love of yours for Indians in India and Indians' love for H-1B visa in America? So how do you differentiate this?
Yeah, we're talking about the H-1Bs, and we are, look, the relationship we have, this is not from me, this is from almost everybody that saw it. They say in the history of India, which has a long history and a brilliant history in so many different ways, there's